can we let the right speak on behalf of women's hard-won rights? So I'm going to ask Selina first, and then come down this way, Tim.
No, we can't. And we can't because we have to understand that what we're facing and experiencing is sex oppression. And that's a structure of oppression, which treats women as a class. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that everybody on the left, every woke bro, has got it right. Far from it. But the right, and I think we've seen this particularly in America, but we've seen it here as well on odd issues, that they will try to use this very often in the way that Julie talked about as freedom of speech and that kind of thing. But their agenda is ultimately always about oppressing women. I think about it this way. Right-wing parties believe in the economic status quo. The majority of underpaid and low-paid workers in the world, and the global system that makes so many people, particularly in the global south, poor, the majority of those people are women and children. And we know that and women are always the primary caregivers. So to my mind, supporting the right on odd issues does not take us very far. And I think what we've heard from every speaker tonight is the fact that this is a movement which is not just about a single issue. This is about overcoming women's oppression. And if we're going to do that, we have to argue not just for equality, which I think the sort of established left are in favour of, and I'm in favour of that as well, but we're arguing for more than that. We're arguing for a different kind of world where the kinds of values that women have been expected to sort of uphold in an undervalued, unpaid way, like care, are right at the heart of our world. That it's a world that's not about profit for the few, but about care and solidarity and fulfilment for the many. I don't see any right-wing agenda that's going to get us that.
The first letter I got to the Telegraph via the Telegraph in 2003, after my piece was published, was from the Evangelical Society, thanking me and praising me, because they think that transsexuals are freaks. Now, they think transsexuals are freaks because they think that women in prostitution are filthy, that all women should be under the care of the church, their father and then their husband, and they thought that they could form an alliance with me. I get the attraction. I can see why when we're in the wilderness and the left has so horrendously betrayed us, where you go to where there is support. But I think we need to be really very careful, because working class women and women of colour and marginalised women will lose out the most when they are strengthened in their agenda, and we give them kudos by appearing side by side with them.
There's a few different things that I want to say about this issue. One of which is that I think that there's a difference between forming an official political alliance with a right-wing organization and having conversations with right-wing people. And I think that that's conflated often. I don't know any feminists who I work with in Vancouver who are officially allying with any right-wing organizations. I am not allying with any right-wing organizations. I am interested in having conversations with people across the political spectrum, and I totally respect other women in this movement who want to do that. Most people in this world don't fit into the left versus right binary. Most people are like apolitical or have a variety of opinions and views that don't fit. The people who describe themselves as left or as right are a very small minority in the world. So it's just not quite as simple as that. I agree that the right wing is not going to contribute to women's liberation. I don't know that the left is going to contribute to women's liberation. So I was like a lifelong, sorry, I'll try not to go on forever, when I was a kid, I was a lifelong, I've been a lifelong socialist. I'm still a socialist. My dad was really involved with the NDP, which is Canada's left-wing party. He was really involved with the union. He was a postee for years and years and years. I went on strike with him. He's a Marxist. I feel obviously very disenchanted with the left, and it doesn't mean that I've changed my views. I still support social housing and universal health care. I'm still opposed to capitalism. But I have a really hard time standing in solidarity with left-wing organizations who've been so disgusting to me and to the women that I work with and groups like Vancouver Rape Relief, and they've thrown us under the bus. And said horrible things about us publicly. They're all in favor of decriminalizing prostitution. Our progressive mayor in Vancouver outright ignored our new prostitution laws when Canada criminalized the purchasing of sex and decriminalized the prostituted women. He directed the Vancouver police not to go after Johns explicitly. They've all gotten on board with this trans thing and vilified the rest of us. And so I'm not at all advocating anyone abandon their leftist principles. I'm not planning on doing that. I'm just saying that the conversation is more important than that. I sympathize with women who have difficulties allying with the left and who are wanting to branch out and reach women who may be right-wing, who may not be left-wing, who may be libertarian, or maybe somewhere in the middle or nothing at all. And I support all women who are doing work in this movement.
I think the position that women exist as a sex is, something like gravity exists. So that's going to be held by people across the political spectrum, whether we agree or disagree with them on other things. I think it's important to make the distinction between people who say that men should be men and women should be women, meaning that sex is innate and that is linked to masculinity and all of the gender stereotypes that we are trying to fight against, and the position that says that sex is innate and gender is something that's imposed on us. And I think that, making the distinction between those two different views, which don't necessarily align with right and left on the economic spectrum, is important. I would kind of agree with Meghan that there are lots of people with all kinds of different political views, and I think making the case for open debate on the policies that affect everyone and on the need for evidence for this is got to be wider than just the left or just our political tribe. And obviously everyone has to decide who they ally with on whatever particular issue. But I think opening up that middle ground for a public debate about policies that affect everyone is something that most people, whether they see themselves as political or not, can support. And that's where I would. That's what I think we need to open up.
Well, we've asked for questions to be handed in before the meeting, so if you could be courteous, then I'll go on to the next questions. We've got one here from somebody saying that they're increasingly worried about schools. Despite lots of efforts, trans ideology is still dominant. How can we be more effective in getting the narrative changed?
Well, I remember when I saw Martina Navratilova play tennis, and I was a young lesbian and there were no lesbians around, and she came out as a lesbian, and she was a great role model, and I thought, it's okay to be a lesbian. And I think that's what we've got to do with this kind of feminism, with real feminism, with proper feminism, and name it for what it is. The feminism that's been spouted by the usual Ash Sarker, Laura Penny, Owen Jones, it's feminism for men. It's pro-prostitution. It's pro-everything bad that happens to us. They support religious fundamentalists. They support the porn industry. And they support trans ideology. So we have to say, we know you need our support. When I was 17 and came into the women's movement, and I was terrified, and everyone was educated, and they were older than me, they mentored me, and they supported me, and they helped me. They didn't patronise me, and they didn't dominate me, and they didn't make me feel small. And that's what we have to do. The more conversations that we can have with groups of women, the better. I've just had so much response from a Facebook group I set up to do some research for a book on real feminism. And I've been inundated with requests from women under 30 who are desperate to have this discussion, so there has to be a way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. In terms of the schools question, it's very difficult at the moment because in the UK schools are so diverse and we lack any more local education authorities. So what I'm looking to political parties to provide is a commitment to return to some kind of local accountability and democratic running of schools, so that there can be some local control over the curriculum, but also, and this is absolutely crucial thinking about the harmful influence of groups like mermaids, we need a political commitment that lobby groups are not allowed to deliver parts of the school curriculum. The result of the increasing privatisation of our education system under the coalition government of 2010 and then the Tory government since 2015. Added to that, I would say the seeping privatisation in higher education has also allowed groups like Mermaids and Stonewall to lobby there, particularly for staff training and that kind of thing. And I've seen that I work at Oxford, I've seen that in my own institution. So again, we really need kind of democratic control of our education institutions. And in terms of schools, I'd say, I don't know if many people have seen this, but Debbie Hayton has got a fantastic piece in the Times Educational Supplement. Which is a fabulous account of how to support transgender students and makes the point that Transgender Trend is the organisation that we should go to. To Julie's wonderful words about getting young women involved is we need more teaching on feminism. I'm a university academic, but I do not suffer from the delusion that I change anything. Universities tend to reflect what's going on. But if you are a student or if you know students, get them to ask, is there teaching on feminist or women's history? Why have we replaced women's studies with queer studies? Those are kind of debates. I know many young women in my own institution and elsewhere who have been really supportive of my stance, and I'd like to thank them because they've been very brave. That is one place that they can often find academics who will ally with them. I know it can be very difficult for them to go into student unions and advocate on feminist politics, but if they want to advocate for a feminist curriculum, there are plenty of us there who will support them.
I just very quickly want to let Stephanie Davis say. Oh, Helen, so sorry. They are twins, so Helen, to say some things about transgender training. That one's working.
I just want to use the opportunity to say that I've just written a children's rights impact assessment on the All Sorts Toolkit, which has been in use in Brighton schools since 2013. And it's 22 pages long. It's very, very thorough. but it does go into absolutely every detail of the indoctrination of our children. It's available at the moment on the Transgender Trend website, so please do go and have a look, and it will be published by Transgender Trend. It's a very, very lovely booklet in a couple of weeks' time, and I want everybody to take this into their local schools. Even if you're not in an area that uses All Sorts, the toolkit that has been produced by All Sorts has been used as a template for loads of toolkits all across the country, and even if they're not being used, it's got such overlaps with the Stonewall, Gyres, Mermaids advice that it's relevant for every single educational authority in this country. The resource is there, it's on Transgender Trend. Please go and use it because it's very, very detailed and it gives you absolutely all the evidence that you need.
Just want to give Meghan the opportunity to come back about what impressions she's gained so far about the UK feminist movement. She's been here less than a week, but I'm sure she's gained some impressions. And are there any things that you'll be taking back to Canada to discuss with women there, and what can UK feminists do to assist Canadian women and vice versa?
Well, the first thing that I noticed was that UK feminists like Prosecco just as much as I do, which is great. I'm like so impressed. I mean, even before I came here, I was so impressed by what you all are doing in the UK. Like, I mean, it makes me almost depressed about Canada because there's so little going on there, and there's so much going on here, and you all are so brave and courageous. And, you know, the fact that even that more than one group exists that's working on this issue, right? Like, you guys are really fighting, and you're not. When they brought through, or when they introduced Bill C-16, which is Canada's gender identity legislation, no one did anything. You know, I said something, and Hilla, the Vancouver Rape Relief, came to the Senate with me also to testify against that bill. But nobody organized, and it just passed, and now here we are, and no one's really doing much in terms of organizing over there. We've just started to have some events in Vancouver, which is great, and those events, those 2 events, we've had 2 so far, were just organized by regular women. Like, they're just women, they're not involved in the movement, they're not, you know, I don't think they've necessarily even taken any feminist action up until now. Their jobs are just as vulnerable as anyone else. I think one is a nurse, another is working in a dental office. Like, it's just regular women who are doing so much and taking risks, and they need support, and I'm so inspired by what's going on here. I'm sure you have your own critiques, but you really should be so proud of what you're doing because it's making a huge, huge difference. This meeting itself is just so impressive, and it's blowing my mind.
Two very quick final things. One is a final question to everybody, and that is, can you recommend a book?
Just read The Transsexual Empire. It was updated in 1994. It was like some kind of prediction. It was like George Orwell predicting the fuckery that was going to come. And, you know, Jan Raymond has, for 40 years, dealt with this hell. And it's a good, scholarly piece of work. So that's what I would recommend.
There is a lot of good feminist history out there, so I can't choose one particular book, but one of the things I would say is if you're interested in knowing about the rather short history of trans ideology and where it's come from, then I would recommend not so much a book as a website. If you haven't come across it before, Jane Clare Jones's excellent website. For anyone who has been amused and baffled by the kind of postmodern elitist use of language and Judith Butler and all the rest of it, that is the place to go, because it explains it all. Jane Clare Jones. Just Google her, find out a really good website.
Okay. Anybody else?
I was rereading Francis, is he still here? Francis Whedon's How Mumbo Jumbo Conquered the World, which I just thought was so prescient, and I just think, this is one issue, but this is happening across other issues, and it's worth making the connection.
I'm going to go with 1984.